In 1974, oh well, let's start over. Welcome to History with Mr. E. And Tater Jr. Shut up. I hate that toad. I would throw him out of the house, but I'm not cruel. And he eats a lot of the flies. I don't know why there's so many flies. Probably because toads attract flies, but we'll never know. In 1974, the new vice president, Gerald Ford, took over for Nixon. He was the first president never to have been elected to office as president or vice president because he was appointed by Nixon after Agnew stepped down. As soon as Nixon stepped down and Ford took over, Ford pardoned Nixon completely. Ford was an okay president, but he was just handed a mess. He tried to cut back on government spending and social welfare. Congress refused to cooperate, and the economy suffered. This was a time where franchises and chain stores began to rise up and grow in popularity. Things like Walmart, McDonald's, Wendy's, Walgreens, and stores like that began to grow at this time. The government turned 200 and celebrated with a massive bicentennial. In 1976. There was a big raise in patriotism. We were recovering some of that love for our government and our country. But really, a lot of people saw Ford as kind of a buffoon. He tripped and fell a few times on national television and things like that, and he just was thought of as a goofball. He lost re-election to the worst president ever, Jimmy Carter, some goofbag from Georgia, a peanut farmer. He was the first president from the Deep South ever to win since Zachary Taylor, and he was weak as a president. He fell in line with anything the UN said, sort of like the great and mighty Obama. He gave up Panama Canal that we had control of to the military dictator of Panama, people. That's stupid. And Panama has been a drug front since then. It led to massive increase in terrorism in El Salvador and Nicaragua, and it's just destabilized and sent South America backwards. During Carter's term in office, we had an energy crisis. Carter thought that solar energy could fix all of our problems. Nuclear plants were working well, but then there was an accident at 3 Mile Island in, I think, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in 1979, the year that I was born. This helped the environmentalist cause when there was a meltdown at a major power plant, and it slowed nuclear plant projects. There was a nuclear plant where I lived in Pennsylvania called Shippingport, and it provided electricity for thousands and thousands of people. And clean electricity, too, whether you like to believe that or not. Inflation rose, so all we did was print more money. The budget deficit went way up. Oil prices soared. From 1977 to 1981, OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, raised oil prices by 250%. And they have not stopped going up since. The price of consumer goods soared. Unions demanded more money for less work, and the economy was a mess. In 1979, problems erupted in Nicaragua when a group of terrorists called the Sandinistas took power. They formed a communist guerrilla army, and even though the U.S. urged democracy, we weren't strong enough to withstand them, and the communists took control and drove the U.S. freedom fighters out. We funded and trained a group of freedom fighters called the Contras. The CIA trained them, and then when we let them go, the Contras turned and became terrorists in Nicaragua. What a disaster. So not only were the Sandinistas awful communists, but we trained freedom fighters and they turned into a bunch of terrorists. We held the SALT II conference in 1979. Carter signed for missile equality, but it was rejected by Congress. In Iran, in Iran, the Ayatollah Khomeini, a Muslim leader, took power, captured the U.S. embassy, and took hostages. Carter was weak, just flat out weak. And he worked hard for peace accords. You know, that we had peace accords with Egypt and Israel, and it was the first peace talks in 2,000 years. But Carter wasn't a strong president to actually put forth or force through any of his policies. This really hurt our nation. Carter was so weak that nobody would take him seriously, and the moment he left office and Ronald Reagan was elected, he told Iran that if they didn't release those prisoners, he would burn Iran to the ground, and within hours they had released those prisoners. Carter was a weak president. There's nothing else you can say about it. Have a good weekend.